What a wonderful conference so far. What a wonderful city as well. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, born and raised. I could never make that comment in Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna speak today. Normally in these conferences, I give presentations and do the military thing and put up slides, but I'm going to talk today because I think it's important that you hear what I'm saying versus looking at the pretty pictures and the nice animation. So first, let me thank TIA for the opportunity to speak at the 2015 Network of the Future Conference. Commissioner Clyburn is a hard act to follow, and I appreciate hearing from her directly and from Commissioner O'Reilly later on this morning on the important ways in which the FCC is pushing the policy envelope to encourage more innovative forms of spectrum sharing. The topic of this session, the spectrum limits for unlimited demand, is particularly timely. While the challenges around these limits don't keep me up most nights, they are certainly what propel me out of the bed every morning. That is because at DoD, we're spending a lot of time thinking about how to transform spectrum limits into spectrum opportunities. We cannot do this alone. This requires the kinds of partnerships and people in this room from across the country, from industry, from academia, and government that we are already building together, especially as we move toward a spectrum reality that is more dependent on spectrum sharing. Because spectrum is a limited resource, there are obvious boundaries imposed by physics in terms of space, frequency, and time dimensions. As Star Trek Scotty noted, I cannot change the laws of physics. Sorry, but I had to say that because of the title of the session here. There are a lot of other related limits as well, ranging from addressing operational constraints and balancing acquisition risks to fostering research and development efforts that improve efficiency, adaptability, and agility for DoD spectrum-defended systems. Some of these limits are bounded only by our ability to think big and take risks. In other words, our imaginations. Others are bounded by current technology capabilities, which continue to grow beyond previous expectations, as well as a host of other factors, including funding and mission requirements. For DoD, mission needs are the overarching consideration, even as they are continuously shaped by a dynamic and shifting security environment. This requires assured spectrum access whenever and wherever needed to support a force that must be modern, capable, and ready. The department is focused on how today's spectrum access limits can become tomorrow's spectrum frontier to help meet increasing demands. While the topic of this session refers to unlimited demand for the 21st century battlefield, I think this is more a question of evolving demand. We can't change our mission requirements. Our warfighters and mission partners must operate spectrum-based systems anywhere in the world where U.S. forces operate and under conditions that are dynamic, complex, and diverse. But we can and are changing how we respond to these dynamics. To this end, DoD is placing a priority on new ways of doing business, including more effective and efficient spectrum use and the development of sharing and other solutions while ensuring national security capabilities continue to evolve to meet that threat. As the National Military Strategy noted, we are compelled to plan for and make difficult choices between current and future challenges. So let me talk a little bit about DoD being a driver for change. Yogi Berra once said, "It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. I like to make not so much predictions, but to provide you with a picture of what we are doing today to manage DoD's future spectrum requirements, shaped by both threats and opportunities. To this end, I like to focus on 4 themes. First, increased flexibility is critical for DoD because, as Yogi wisely observed, we cannot predict the future. We can, however, anticipate it. And that's exactly what increased flexibility allows DoD to do. Second, by nurturing partnerships engineering solutions together, and contributing to improved policies, we can and are improving our access to spectrum. Increasingly, this means a greater reliance on sharing, including bidirectional sharing opportunities, which I'll get into in a moment. Third, the technology innovation is a catalyst for this change. DoD must maintain a technological edge over its potential adversaries. We see this as requiring an evolutionary approach to revolutionary change, driven by a need to improve the spectrum-based tools and the warfighter has to accomplish its mission. We plan to achieve this by creating a culture of trust, rewarding innovation, seizing opportunity, and empowering sharing opportunities. Fourth, our spectrum stewardship is directly informed by our operational requirements. Within DoD, this means addressing unique differentiators that distinguish us from commercial counterparts, including the length of time that our technology investments remain in operation, which is decades for our satellite-based operations as an example. DoD operations also are global and must be executed not only in a congested spectrum band, but also in contested environments. For us, the quality of service equivalent to preventing a drop call is the ability to operate in austere, hostile environments with anti-jamming capabilities. DoD spectrum stewardship is defined by commitments to both national security and economic growth, which are complementary public interests from our perspective. To this end, we fully support the President's goal of identifying 500 megahertz of spectrum for wireless broadband by 2020. In a recent progress report, the National Telecommunication and Information Administration, NTIA, noted that between October 2010 and September 2014, NTIA and the FCC formally recommended or identified for study for potential reallocation up to 589 megahertz of spectrum. DoD has played a pivotal role in these efforts, leading with engineering and working in close collaboration with federal agencies and policymakers, including the NTIA, the FCC, and the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, as well as key stakeholders from industry. These efforts we see the ability to successfully operate without any problem, as well as support our economic goals. Let me talk a little bit about DoD as a change agent. To ensure we maintain our operational effectiveness, we are rapidly entering previously uncharted territory from a policy, acquisition, technology, and even cultural point of view. On the latter point, as sharing becomes the new normal, trust has to become a new normal as well. Against this backdrop, escalating operational requirements that demand on spectrum access is already compelling us to be more efficient as the department uses spectrum to maximize mission effectiveness. Our spectrum-dependent capabilities are deployed to meet highly specialized missions required to support the nation as a whole. In addition, our adversaries are not standing still either, but are aggressively developing and fielding electronic attack and cyberspace technologies that can limit the ability of DoD to access spectrum for military operations. The DoD electromagnetic spectrum strategy captures how we are putting in place the building blocks to address these challenges. The strategy recognizes that assured spectrum access is a prerequisite to modern military operations. As a call to action, the strategy lays out three goals. Number one, to expedite the development of spectrum-dependent system capabilities with increased efficiency, flexibility, and adaptability. Number two, to increase the agility of DoD operations. And number three, to sharpen our responsiveness to ongoing spectrum regulatory and policy changes. A roadmap and action plan is addressing the wide range of follow-on activities across the department that is needed to put in place the next steps to reach our strategy goals. Where else are we heading? DoD is linking the electromagnetic spectrum strategy to operational requirements, current capability gaps, and broader mission goals. Our efforts to improve spectrum management must converge toward an end goal of global operational flexibility, which will be achieved through electromagnetic spectrum operations, known as IMSO. IMSO is the intersection at which electronic warfare and spectrum management activities are coming together to exploit, attack, protect, and optimize the electromagnetic spectrum operational environment for the warfighter. At the same time, widely available commercial off-the-shelf equipment, adversaries can obtain relatively inexpensive spectrum-based capabilities that were at one time limited to advanced wealthy nations and their militaries. Simply put, now one person's Google Earth is another person's precision targeting tool. This reality forced DoD to develop and field capabilities throughout the electromagnetic spectrum. So how do we see things in the future? Technology innovation and policy innovation, when matched with the operating reality that I just described, is where the rubber meets the road. In terms of where we are going next, it is critical that we get this right. Historically, the pace of regulatory change has lagged behind the faster pace of technology change. In the era of modern spectrum policy, regulatory flexibility has been the main way that national regulators have tried to bridge the gap so that government rules do not create roadblocks to technology advances while still ensuring that comprehensive technical evaluations are favored to prevent harmful interference, protect incumbents, and allow innovation by new spectrum entrants to flourish. As the pace of technology change and spectrum requirements continue to accelerate, we need spiral change in our continued evolution toward advanced policy and technology solutions. We are at an inflection point created by the lightning speed with which wireless broadband innovation is occurring. Spectrum capacity demand across both commercial and government users is growing, and the threats that our warfighter face around the world are becoming more sophisticated. The DoD 2014 Quadrennial Defense Review envisioned a future force that will be small, ready, and capable as investment decisions ensure that we maintain our technological edge over potential adversaries and that we advance U.S. interests across all domains. Leveraging technology is to reduce force size and reduce personal risk. DoD needs continued access to more spectrum. To help close the gap between the pace of technology innovation and the changes to enabling policies, DoD is leading the National Advanced Spectrum and Communication Test Network, also known as NASTN, under the auspices of the Department of Commerce as a focal point for accelerating the development and deployment of spectrum sharing technologies that increase both federal and commercial spectrum access. NASTN is structured as a one-stop shop for coordinating access to federally owned, operated, or funded spectrum test facilities. The intent is to create an environment of trust to support impartial testing and evaluation of new spectrum sharing technologies and ultimately balance policy decisions that are driven by scientifically sound tests and evaluations. We believe NASTN will enable us to lead and will also lead us to sound policy changes with effectively engineered sharing solutions. The stand-up of the National Spectrum Consortium is another leading indicator that DoD is turning to new ways of fostering technology innovation based on trust, partnership, and sound engineering. The Industry Consortium is a collaboration of multiple federal agencies as part of a 5-year, $1.25 billion other transaction authority agreement with the Office of the Department of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Emerging Capabilities and Prototyping. This unprecedented spectrum collaboration between industry and government will focus on 4 major activities. Number 1, maturing technologies that assist and improve electromagnetic spectrum flexibility, sharing, and use. Experimentation to better inform the optimal allocation of those technologies for both public and private objectives. Number 3, demonstration of new technologies to increase trust among spectrum stakeholders. And number 4, policy developments to ensure technologies don't outpace the appropriate guidance for their best use. With respect to policy innovation, a recent success story, as most of you know, is the Commission's adoption in April of the rules of the Citizen Broadband Radio Service and 3550 to 3650 megahertz band, utilizing sensing and a database to protect federal incumbent users, including critical military radar systems. This order represents the effectiveness of the ongoing collaboration between DoD and the FCC and NTIA and industry to determine ways to engineer equitable sharing solutions with commercial broadband users when and where possible. The success of the FCC's AWS-3 auction also points to important lessons learned about the benefits of trust building, partnerships, and information exchange, such as the effective collaboration between industry and the government to refine relocation and sharing scenarios as part of the CSPAC working group efforts. Bi-directional sharing is another policy area that shows promise with regard to federal access to non-federal bands on a shared basis, in addition to non-federal access to federal spectrum. Bi-directional sharing is important to further advance spectrum policy for sharing that facilitates sharing opportunities for federal users as well. Federal agencies already share extensively with each other in most federal bands, including allowing diverse government capabilities to efficiently and effectively layer these operations in the same band. DoD envisions a framework to expand the boundaries of sharing to increasingly include federal access to non-federal bands, as well as vice versa, based on the following principles for spectrum access to be: number one, flexibility, and not limited by factors such as temporal, emergency, or intermittent uses or remote locations to address a range of short and long-term mission considerations. Number two, broadly scoped to not eliminate specific requirements for consideration that may not yet have evolved but will need to be in the near or midterm. And number three, continue and expand policies that are effective, including that federal government users do not pay for spectrum access and fees are based on administrative cost only. So what's next? The unprecedented reliance on sharing solutions is forcing all of us to embrace new policy, regulatory, and business approaches that would have been unthinkable even a decade ago, and in some cases, even 5 years ago. When it was released in 2010, the FCC National Broadband Plan included an important caveat that the plan is a beta and always will be. Like the internet itself, the plan will always be changing, adjusting to new developments in technology and markets, reflecting new realities and evolving to realize the unforeseen opportunities of a particular time. DoD is mindful that we are navigating a spectrum policy landscape in which the rules of the road of spectrum sharing is still being developed. The idea of beta is shifting as technology capabilities and operating requirements necessitate. We recognize that while sharing creates new risks to be managed, it also provides new opportunities. DoD is embracing sharing solutions as embodied in the spectrum strategy. The Consortium, NASTN efforts, and our ongoing commitments to help shape balanced national and international policy solutions that address both military requirements and broadband needs. Going forward, NASTN and the Department of Commerce's Center for Advanced Communication will play an important role to identify viable sharing solutions as part of increased cooperation between federal and non-federal users. This will include through better information sharing, proactive engagement, standardized test plans, easier access to federal testing resources, and better access to test data and analysis. A cultural changeover to an improved environment of trust is already underway and must continue. NASTN can play a key role in this transformation. DoD and all of us need regulatory predictability so that the terms and conditions of spectrum sharing are well understood and the ramifications well evaluated so our long acquisition timelines can reduce risk. The department needs security considerations to be addressed up front, particularly with regard to a common understanding of how classified and sensitive information associated with military operations will be protected. DoD and the other federal stakeholders involved in the development of sharing policies also need assurances that enforcement measures will continue to evolve as sharing measures evolve themselves. Enlightened sharing also has to provide flexibility to assure that future growth requirements can be met as well as DoD's continued need for spectrum flexibility and agility. The good news is that there are lessons to be learned from sharing arrangements already underway, including with regard to the TV white spaces rules, the 3.5 gigahertz sharing rules, and the transition sharing arrangements of AWS-3. To quote Yogi Berra one more time, the future ain't what it used to be. DoD is actively working with industry, academia, and government stakeholders to address questions in this brave new world of spectrum sharing and turning spectrum limits into spectrum opportunities. Thank you very much.